Persuasion is a key element in business writing. When we send to somebody, we want them to do something with the information, and somewhere along the line, we want to persuade them to either read it, act on it, do something with it. When we persuade, the very first thing that we need to do is we need to hook the reader or hook the listener. When you do your voiceover a little later in the semester, remember these steps or go back and watch this deck again because it's very important in how you persuade somebody to your point of view. And we can hook people by a quote, a statistic, a question, something that gets them thinking, because once they're thinking, they're more engaged and they're more willing to make an investment in learning and educating themselves about whatever it is that you're talking about. You really have to get me to buy in. And the way you do that is you kind of shock me, candidly. Somewhere in the piece, you need to let me know where you stand. And you need to use, if you're speaking, you certainly need to use your voice to show me your passion, your concern, your emphasis, your tone. If you're writing, you need to make sure that you also share with me where you stand and why you stand there. With everything we do in business, you need to tell me why I should care. There has to be a reader benefit. There has to be something in it for the person who's reading the piece or listening to the piece. If there isn't, they're just not going to engage. You know, you start with a strong reason, whatever it is. Let's say you're talking about euthanasia, and you start with your strongest point, what you think supports your side of the argument the best. But then you have to support it with evidence. It can't just be your opinion. It has to be stated in a way that shows that there's something else that supports what you believe, and then restate it. Now, you may have two or three of these strong reasons, but every time you give a strong reason, you need to support it with evidence. Pieces need to be balanced. You need to acknowledge the other side of the argument or the other side of the perspective. If you don't, then you're just going to come across like a zealot, and you're going to come across as somebody who really hasn't researched or looked at all aspects of the situation. And this is especially true in business. Bosses, when you bring concepts to them, want to know that you've looked at it in 10 different ways, and this is the best option, and why is it the best option? But they also want you to acknowledge that there are other ways to look at it. Once you've acknowledged that there's another way to look at it, then you can dismiss it. So, for example, I might say, juveniles shouldn't go to jail for the rest of their lives because their brains are still developing until the age of 25, and then go, however, and start citing cases or examples of why that doesn't necessarily hold up. Once you explain why that's not your approach and support it, support getting rid of it, then you can move on to the next and final part of persuasion. Remember who your audience is, right? Your audience is not the person who is opposed to you. And this is a mistake that people make in business all the time. They think the person who stands on the other side of the fence is the person who they have to argue with, but that is not what this is about. Persuasion is about the audience that you're trying to convince, not the audience that you will never convince. 40% of the people in a pack of 100 are the people who you're trying to convince. You've got 20 or 30% on the left and 20 or 30% on the right, and those people are unlikely to change positions. They're likely to stay in the camp that they belong to. So your persuasion is really geared to the person in the middle, because that's a person who hasn't made their mind up. In the case of where it might be you and somebody else who's bringing forth a concept, and it's your boss who's going to be making the decision, it's not your situation to argue somebody else's point. It's your situation to convince your boss that the way you're suggesting is the better approach. Persuasion is not about the other side. Persuasion is about the person who's making the decision. Don't lose sight of your audience. A good argument offers what you want them to do with it. In marketing, we would call this a call to action. If at the end of a piece of marketing content, you don't tell them what you want them to do now, go to the store, buy, go to the website, take a look at a piece of literature, be on the lookout for something coming out next month. If you don't share with them what you want them to do, what call to action you want them to take, then that piece of content is for nothing. So it's no different in persuasion. In persuasion, we want to have what's called a call to action. We want to tell them what we want them to do with the information now that they have it. Be aware, support your cause, vote for candidate, donate, give their time, think about switching budget here or spending the budget in this direction. Whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do, remind them of what you want them to do, and if possible, give them a timeline in which you want them to do it. The final piece of any good persuasion piece or writing or speaking is to close strong. It's the last thing people hear you say. You need to remind them of your position. You need to recap a little bit. Don't spend too much time doing this. You need to remind them what you want them to do with this, and you need to leave them thinking. So a lot of times it's good to leave them thinking with a question at the end. My sister sells in a software company, and I remember distinctly the person she was debating with. She was trying to get into this account, and somebody said to her, you're never going to get the incumbent, the existing software company out, because they're just embedded in there. And she said, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to get the other company out. I'm trying to get our company in. And she said, because if we don't get our company in, then next year we're going to be in worse shape than we are. And she said, is that where we want to be, where next year we're having this exact same discussion? So I kind of like the ending of that persuasive piece, and I like the fact that she remembered what she was trying to accomplish and who she was trying to persuade. I think it's very important that you close strong. It's very important that you remember all these points about what persuasion is. I wish you good luck when you put together your persuasive voiceovers. I can't wait to hear them. Remember, you can always go back to this deck when you have to do that. But when you write a persuasive piece, when you're trying to convince your boss or somebody in the company to support a cause for you, or to put some of that hard-earned budget into something that you want done or you need done, remember what the steps to persuasion are all about.